What happened last night in the Kalamazoo area. 6 people are dead. 2 others were seriously wounded after a man opened fire at 3 different locations.
On February 20th, 2016, a seemingly ordinary Saturday in Kalamazoo, Michigan took a dark turn when a local Uber driver embarked on a series of shootings that would leave 6 people dead and 2 others injured. The events of that night would culminate in one of the strangest explanations for a mass shooting in recent history. The case of Jason Dalton and the so-called Uber possession began to unfold as night fell over Kalamazoo County. What started as a normal day for residents soon became a nightmare as shootings occurred at multiple locations, including an apartment complex, a car dealership, and outside a restaurant. As news of the shooting spread, the local community was gripped by fear and confusion. The randomness of the attacks and the lack of apparent motive added to the growing sense of unease. Law enforcement agencies scrambled to piece together the events of the night, working to identify the perpetrator and understand the reasoning behind such senseless violence. The investigation would reveal a timeline of events that seemed to defy logical explanation. The day's events began innocuously enough. At approximately 4 p.m., a Kalamazoo County resident named Matt Mellon requested an Uber ride to a friend's house. At 4:21 p.m., Jason Dalton arrived in a silver Chevy Equinox to pick up Mellon. What should have been a routine ride soon took a terrifying turn. The situation reached a critical point when Dalton finally came to a stop at an intersection. Seizing the opportunity, Mellon made a desperate escape, jumping from the vehicle and immediately calling 911. In his panicked state, Mellon shouted warnings to a nearby neighbor who had been drawn outside by the commotion. The 911 call that followed would later be scrutinized as part of the investigation. The operator's response seemed surprisingly casual given the gravity of the situation. Mellon, perhaps still shaken from his ordeal, opted for the latter, providing the car's description and license plate number without pressing charges. This decision, while understandable in the moment, would later be questioned. Some argued that contacting Uber directly might have been more effective given the company's ability to track their drivers' locations in real time. However, it was revealed that, at the time, reaching a human representative at Uber was nearly impossible. The company relied on a voicemail system and email correspondence, methods that would prove woefully inadequate in responding to urgent situations. As the evening progressed, the situation took a dark and violent turn. At 4:34 p.m., just minutes after the unsettling ride with Matt Mellon, Jason Dalton returned to his home in a move that would prove pivotal to the unfolding tragedy. He retrieved his Glock 19 handgun. At 5:15 p.m., he made a call to his wife, arranging to meet her at his parents' house to collect the keys to their Hummer H3. En route to this meeting, Dalton accepted another Uber request. A woman had asked for a ride for her boyfriend from a Richland Township apartment complex. She soon followed up with a text message correcting the pickup address, a detail that would become significant as events unfolded. Upon arriving at the apartment complex, Dalton found no one waiting. His behavior, already erratic, became increasingly aggressive. Witnesses reported seeing his silver Chevy Equinox driving recklessly through the parking lot, swerving over speed bumps, and coming to sudden, screeching halts. At approximately 5:42 p.m., the situation escalated dramatically. Tina Carruthers, a resident of the complex, was walking with her daughter and her daughter's friends when she encountered Dalton. She later recounted how his vehicle approached at high speed, the sound of a barking dog emanating from within. When Dalton asked if she had requested an Uber, Carruthers responded with an emphatic no. Upset by his dangerous driving in an area where children were present, what happened next would forever change the lives of those present. As Carruthers turned to leave, the sound of gunshots shattered the evening calm. In a display of remarkable bravery, she yelled for the children to run and positioned herself between them and the source of the gunfire. Her selfless act would save lives, but at great personal cost. Carruthers was struck multiple times, taking bullets in her arm and both legs. Despite the intense pain and fear, she had the presence of mind to play dead, hoping to end the onslaught. The horrifying scene at the apartment complex finally came to an end when Dalton, believing he had killed Carruthers, emptied the magazine of his Glock 19. As he fled, residents frantically called 911, seeking help for the injured woman. In a testament to her extraordinary character, Carruthers' first words upon regaining consciousness were not about her own injuries, but a desperate inquiry about the safety of the children she had protected. At approximately 6:05 p.m., about 20 minutes after the shooting, Dalton made a chilling phone call to the woman who had originally requested the Uber ride at the apartment complex. He calmly informed her that he could not complete the ride because something had come up. The understatement of his words, given the violence he had just perpetrated, was staggering. Just 1 minute after the shooting, Dalton's Equinox was spotted running a red light at an intersection about a mile from the apartment complex. In his haste, he collided with another vehicle and fled the scene, leaving behind yet another bewildered victim, who promptly reported the hit and run to the authorities. As emergency personnel tended to the gravely injured Carruthers, Dalton's night took another bizarre turn. He met with his wife and children at his parents' home in Comstock Township. There, he spun a fantastical tale to explain the damage to his car, claiming he had been sideswiped by an angry taxi driver who had even fired a shot at him, supposedly enraged by Uber's encroachment on traditional taxi business. To bolster his story, he assured his wife that he had reported the incident to Uber, and they were handling it. In a move that hinted at the turmoil in his mind, Dalton gave his wife a 9mm Taurus handgun, insisting it wasn't safe for her to be at home without it. He then issued strange instructions, telling her not to go to work and to keep the children home from school. When he attempted to leave in the family's Hummer and found it wouldn't start, he took his wife's black Chevy HHR instead. But it was Dalton's parting words that sent a chill down his wife's spine. "I cannot tell you what's going on," he said ominously, "but you will learn about it on the 11 o'clock news." After leaving his family, Dalton returned to his residence. In a puzzling move, he retrieved another firearm and proceeded to fire a shotgun multiple times in his shed. The sudden gunfire alarmed a neighbor, who promptly reported the disturbance, adding another layer of confusion to the unfolding events. At approximately 6:45 p.m., Dalton was captured on security footage withdrawing money from an ATM. What followed was perhaps the most chilling aspect of the night's events. For the next hour, Dalton resumed his role as an Uber driver, picking up and dropping off passengers as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. None of his passengers reported any unusual or alarming behavior, a fact that would later underscore the deeply unsettling nature of Dalton's actions. During this period of apparent normalcy, Dalton made another cryptic phone call to his wife around 8:30 p.m., instructing her not to contact her parents. This odd request, coupled with his earlier warnings, hinted at a man aware of impending chaos, yet unable or unwilling to stop it. For nearly 4 hours, from about 6:15 p.m. to 10:01 p.m., Dalton's activities seemed to return to routine. However, this period of calm was merely the eye of the storm. At approximately 10:08 p.m., Dalton arrived at a Kia dealership in Kalamazoo. The presence of a father and son at the dealership at this late hour, while unusual, was not entirely out of place. It was later surmised that they might have been previewing a truck with the father indulging his son's interest in vehicles they planned to view the following day. The Kia dealership quickly escalated into tragedy. Jason Dalton approached 17-year-old Tyler D. Smith and his 53-year-old father, Richard E. Smith, who were innocently browsing vehicles. In a chilling moment, Dalton asked them what they were looking at. Before either could respond, he opened fire, discharging approximately 18 rounds and fatally wounding both father and son. One woman, close enough to see the smoke from the gun barrel, immediately called 911 to report the shooting. The proximity of these witnesses to such a violent act would later prove crucial in piecing together the night's events. But Dalton's rampage was far from over. Approximately 15 minutes later and 5 miles away, another horrifying scene unfolded outside a Cracker Barrel restaurant in Texas Township. The late hour made the presence of people at the restaurant unusual, adding an eerie quality to the unfolding horror. In a swift and merciless attack that lasted less than a minute, Dalton approached 2 vehicles in the parking lot. He reportedly asked one victim a question before opening fire, then turned his weapon on the occupants of the adjacent vehicle. The carnage was devastating. 4 women, all friends, lost their lives in this senseless act of violence. Mary Jo Nye, 60, Mary Lou Nye, 62, Dorothy Brown, 74, and Barbara Hawthorne, 68, were all fatally shot. The tragedy was compounded by the fact that Mary Jo and Mary Lou were sisters-in-law. A 5th victim, 14-year-old Abigail Koff, niece of one of the women, was critically wounded with a gunshot to the head. Initially reported as deceased, she would miraculously survive, though her life would be forever altered by this night of terror. After the shooting, witnesses reported seeing Dalton calmly walk back to his car, reload his weapon, and drive away as if nothing had happened. This cold, methodical behavior added another layer of horror to the already shocking events. As reports of the shootings flooded in, law enforcement found themselves facing a perplexing and terrifying situation. The initial shooting at the apartment complex yielded a description of a silver Chevy Equinox, complete with license plate details. Now, reports were coming in of a shooter in a black or dark blue car at the Kia dealership. This conflicting information led investigators to believe they might be dealing with multiple shooters, further complicating their efforts to bring the night of violence to an end. As the night of terror continued, law enforcement found themselves racing from one crime scene to another, struggling to make sense of the seemingly random acts of violence. The discovery of the shootings at the Cracker Barrel restaurant only added to their confusion and urgency. Police dash cam footage captured the bewilderment of officers as they surveyed the scene, trying to comprehend how the shooter had approached his victims so brazenly, firing multiple shots before calmly walking away. Despite the chaos, the law enforcement agencies in Kalamazoo County demonstrated remarkable coordination and efficiency. The sheriff's department, city police, and county police worked in seamless cooperation. Their swift response was a testament to their professionalism in the face of an unprecedented crisis. Their efforts would prove crucial in bringing the night's horrors to an end. As the manhunt for Jason Dalton intensified, a surreal twist in the narrative emerged. Incredibly, Dalton continued to accept Uber fares, ferrying unsuspecting passengers around the city even as police searched for him. At 12:04 a.m. on February 21st, he picked up 3 people and dropped them off at a dormitory on the Western Michigan University campus. These passengers later reported that while Dalton wasn't particularly friendly, he did nothing to raise their suspicions. Just minutes later, at 12:12 a.m., Dalton picked up 4 more passengers and drove them to their hotel. In a chilling moment that underscored the surreal nature of the night, one passenger, aware of the ongoing shooting spree, jokingly asked Dalton if he was the shooter. Dalton calmly denied it, his composure belying the horrific acts he had committed earlier that night. The pattern repeated itself a few minutes later when Dalton picked up another group of 3 passengers. Once again, he was asked if he was the shooter, and once again, he vehemently denied it. The juxtaposition of these mundane Uber rides with the violent rampage that had occurred earlier in the night created a disturbing portrait of a man operating in 2 drastically different realities. The end of Dalton's rampage came swiftly and unexpectedly. At 12:36 a.m., a sergeant with the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Office observed Dalton dropping off his last group of passengers. The officer followed Dalton and requested backup. Joined by a KDPS officer, they conducted a traffic stop at 12:40 a.m. As officers approached his vehicle, Dalton complied with their instructions without hesitation. He silently silently extended his hands out of the window, allowing the officers, one in full tactical gear with an AR at the ready, the other maintaining a watchful perimeter, to safely approach and apprehend him. The eerie silence that accompanied Dalton's arrest was punctuated only by his brief acknowledgement that he knew why he was being taken into custody. Dressed in a 511 tactical jacket purchased from a gun store, Dalton's demeanor was unsettlingly nonchalant as he was handcuffed. A handgun was discovered in his waistband, a chilling reminder of the violence he had unleashed earlier that night. As the investigation began to unfold, police quickly determined that Dalton had fired at least 30 rounds during his rampage and that none of his victims were connected. This random nature of the attacks only deepened the mystery surrounding Dalton's motives. To understand the man behind these horrific acts, investigators delved into Dalton's background. Born and raised in Greenfield, Indiana, Dalton had a seemingly normal upbringing. He graduated from Comstock High School in Kalamazoo in 1989 and went on to earn an associate degree in law enforcement from Kalamazoo Valley Community College in 1992. Curiously, despite his studies, he never enrolled in the police academy program. Dalton married his wife Carol in 1995, and the couple had 2 children, aged 10 and 15 at the time of the shootings. They lived in Cooper, a suburb of Kalamazoo, where Dalton was generally regarded as a nice guy and a good family man. However, in the days leading up to the shootings, friends and neighbors noticed changes in his behavior. He appeared depressed and paranoid, with one neighbor reporting the disturbing incident of Dalton firing a gun in his shed shortly before the rampage began. His professional life painted a picture of a man who had struggled to find his place. Despite his law enforcement studies, Dalton was unable to secure a job as a police officer in Michigan or neighboring states. Unwilling to relocate far from home, he pivoted to auto body work, studying at Wyotech in Laramie, Wyoming. This led to various jobs, including a stint at a BMW office in New Jersey, before he settled into work as an insurance adjuster. At the time of the shootings, Dalton had been working as an Uber driver for just 2 weeks, allegedly to save money for a vacation. An Uber representative confirmed that Dalton had passed all background checks without raising any red flags. However, hints of a volatile temperament emerged from his professional life. A former co-worker at the insurance company recalled an incident where Dalton had yelled at a customer over the phone, slamming down the receiver and pacing angrily afterward. This outburst had led to concerns about his professionalism, with some customers noting his unprofessional tone. On the day of the shootings, Dalton had engaged in what seemed to be a routine activity for him, visiting local gun shops with a friend. This hobby, while not unusual in Michigan, took on a sinister cast in light of the events that followed. During one of these visits, Dalton purchased a concealed carry jacket designed with pockets for magazines and a pistol. A search of Dalton's home revealed a collection of 12 to 15 guns, all legally obtained. The prosecuting attorney noted that this was not unusual for the area, stating that similar numbers of firearms could likely be found in many homes in the neighborhood. This detail painted a picture of a community where gun ownership was commonplace, making Dalton's actions all the more shocking. But it was Dalton's confession that truly defied comprehension. As he sat in the police interview room, speaking in a monotone voice, he began to unfold a tale so bizarre that it left investigators stunned. Dalton claimed that the devil had made him commit these heinous acts, using the Uber app as a conduit for possession. According to Dalton, when he opened the Uber app that night, he saw not the familiar red icon, but a symbol he recognized as the Eastern Star, an upside-down pentagram associated with a women's fraternity linked to the Freemasons. This recognition, he claimed, triggered a series of supernatural events. A devil's head, described as a horned cow, appeared on his screen. When he acknowledged the symbol aloud, the app's color changed from red to black. Dalton insisted that this acknowledgement of the symbol was the catalyst for his actions. He claimed that the app began giving him assignments and that it took control of his entire body. In his mind, had he never mentioned the resemblance to the Eastern Star symbol, none of the violence would have occurred. When questioned about why he was able to stop for the officers during his arrest, Dalton's explanation was equally surreal. He claimed that at the moment of his arrest, the app switched from black back to red, accompanied by a series of beeps. This change, he said, allowed him to regain control of himself, explaining his calm demeanor during the arrest. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the case of Jason Dalton took unexpected turns. Initially, there was a protracted legal battle over the admissibility of Dalton's confession. The defense argued that the questioning had violated Dalton's Miranda rights, but prosecutors countered with the public safety exception, which allows continued questioning if there's concern for immediate public danger. Ultimately, on the eve of his trial, Dalton surprised everyone by entering a guilty plea, likely to avoid the possibility of the death penalty. This decision brought an abrupt end to the legal wrangling, but left many questions unanswered. Dalton's confession, bizarre as it was, provided a chilling glimpse into his state of mind during the rampage. He described feeling controlled by the Uber app, claiming it had turned from red to black and began giving him assignments. He spoke of feeling like a puppet, with the app taking over his body and even controlling his car. Dalton insisted he could hear other people's phones and affect their ratings. Perhaps most disturbing was Dalton's insistence that he was not a killer, despite acknowledging his actions. This disconnect between his actions and his sense of responsibility added another layer of complexity to an already baffling case. As the community grappled with these revelations, theories began to circulate about what could have driven Dalton to commit such horrific acts. Some speculated that he had simply experienced a mental break, and his bizarre explanation was an attempt to deflect blame. Others wondered if financial stress or work-related issues had pushed him over the edge. However, more outlandish theories also gained traction. One posited that Dalton was a victim of mind control, possibly related to MKUltra, the CIA's notorious mind control program. Proponents of this theory pointed to similarities between Dalton's description of his experience and other alleged cases of mind control, such as Sirhan Sirhan's assassination of Robert F. Kennedy. Another theory, perhaps more aligned with Dalton's own explanation, suggested genuine demonic possession. The randomness of the attacks and Dalton's claim of feeling controlled by an outside force resonated with those inclined towards supernatural explanations. As these theories circulated, they highlighted the human need to find meaning in senseless tragedy. During the trial, a dramatic scene unfolded in the courtroom. The defendant, previously silent, suddenly erupted into incoherent ramblings. He had to be forcibly removed, his outburst visibly distressing one of the victims who was testifying at the time. Ms. Carruthers, one of the survivors, emerged as a figure of remarkable courage. The Uber driver case ultimately left many questions unanswered, joining the ranks of perplexing incidents that continue to challenge our understanding of human behavior and the nature of reality. That's it for today, sleuths. Hungry for more mysteries? Subscribe to Secret Sleuths and hit that bell. Until next time, stay curious.